Good afternoon. Obviously, this is not our usual business. Definitely didn't anticipate standing here and having an end-of-season press conference this week, or specifically today. But there are reasons for that. I'll outline some of that and talk about the things that we need to do moving forward so that we're not here in this position at this time of year. Obviously, there's big disappointment that comes with this, but before I get into some of that, I do want to work within the normal framework in which we work, kind of outline this past week and that game and the performances and so forth. It was a unique week for us. We had to do our business in stadium, and also some other dominoes had to fall. We talked openly about it last week in terms of us having the ability to focus and do that. It was challenging. The guys did what was necessary and won the game. But within the game, there were some things that were problems for us, that had been problems for us. We had a big turnover in the first half. I thought that was the significant play in the first half of the game. The guys continued to fight and make the necessary plays. We were juggling some people and so forth from a role standpoint. Can't say enough about Matt, the kicker that we acquired last week. He came up big. We awarded him the game ball, and appropriately so, contributing to our efforts in the ways that he did. Also, kind of just leading up to the game and since the game, I know there's been a lot of speculation and discussions regarding AB's participation or non-participation in the game. I want to outline, kind of re-outline that, what transpired up until the time we talked on Friday, and then what transpired after that. I'll start last week. I met with you guys Friday after practice. I outlined what had transpired to AB to that point. All of those things are very accurate. I'll re-outline it for you. He came in on Wednesday and expressed soreness in his lower body, feet, ankles, knees, specifically a knee. It was no big deal from that perspective. It happens some with veteran players. I give them a day off. I work younger guys. It's not only about their protection and preservation, but it's also about the growth and development of younger guys. I've done it at the quarterback position routinely this year, just about every week. Very rarely does Ben work on a Wednesday. I do it at the center position with Marquise Pouncey. I do it at the guard position on Thursday with Ramon Foster, to name a few. I've done it at the wideout position in the past. When AB was young, Wednesday was a big day for him because it wasn't a big day for a guy like Hines Ward. So that was not a big deal for us. We came in on Thursday. He expressed that he was continuing to feel that discomfort. Again, given the fact that this was the Cincinnati Bengals, a second time a divisional opponent. In terms of the familiarity, again, it wasn't anything to ring the alarm bells about. We work younger people. I listed him on the injury report that day with the knee that he described. On Friday's kind of the witching hour. Situational football and things of that nature in terms of readiness for the game. When he came in and expressed discomfort in his knee on Friday and the fact that he wouldn't be able to participate on Friday, that's when we sent him to get an MRI. And at that time, I instructed him after he gets the MRI to go home, to get off his feet, to lay low, and that I would communicate with him Friday evening, and we'll plot out our course of action from there. Again, under normal circumstances, guy doesn't participate in Friday's practice. That essentially potentially removes them from participation in the game unless they are a veteran guy who we got a great deal of comfort in terms of execution and detail, like AB, and we got an opponent that we're familiar with second time around, like a divisional opponent, Cincinnati. So wanted to leave the light on in terms of his participation. That was the nature of our conversation. That's what I outlined to you guys after practice. That's why we listed him as questionable for the game. Then after Friday's business was done, it became difficult to communicate and catch up with him. I wasn't able to communicate with him on Friday evening or Saturday morning. So when we had our Saturday morning mock game or walkthrough and he was unavailable and we hadn't communicated with him, then it became something altogether different. We decided to focus our energies on the guys that were working and prepared to work and present. And so those are the guys that we prepared to play in the football game. Woke up Sunday morning, got a call from his agent, Drew Rosenhaus. Drew expressed that he was feeling better and that he would potentially be able to participate. I outlined to Drew that decisions weren't made like that, but I would be interested in visiting with him in person at the stadium prior to the game, but playing wasn't on the menu. So Drew relayed that to him. I met with AB prior to the game. He asked what he could do. I said the best thing he could do in terms of helping us win the game is to be there and support his teammates. He agreed to do that. We had a general conversation about his overall health. I sent him to the training staff to visit with those guys who obviously were at the stadium readying people for play. And that was the last conversation that he and I had. I subsequently saw him in the bowl, in stadium, doing pregame warm-ups and things of that nature. But as the game began to unfold, obviously, I get occupied with the things that are at hand. I hear that he left the stadium. I don't confirm that because, again, I was centered around the guys that were performing in stadium and things of that nature. So that's an outline of what's transpired from my perspective, from our perspective. I just wanted to add some real teeth to that discussion and outline it for you. I'm sure there's subsequent questions. I'll be happy to address those, but I just wanted to outline that in reference to the Bengal game because obviously it was an element of evaluating last week and its preparation. And I'll also add that there were a lot of things going on regarding player availability in preparation for the game. We experienced a kicking change that I described and outlined with Boz dealing with a groin. He dealt with the groin on Sunday in New Orleans, was able to get treatment and perform. His next significant day after that was Thursday. He performed but didn't have a level of comfort. We didn't have a level of comfort. We had worked Matt out, so we got Matt in motion. That was ongoing, and obviously Matt's infusion into the process and overall readiness and on Friday and Saturday and getting a sense of what it is he needed to perform became dominant in terms of some of our side discussions. What hash he would need the ball on, what were his capabilities, how could we offset some areas of his play that needed to be offset with coverage, et cetera. James Conner was fighting to get back and with some positive and negative results along the way. His availability was not determined until a pregame workout. Sean Davis was another guy that was fighting. It became evident that Sean wasn't going to be able to participate after the result of Friday's workout. When he came in on Saturday, the result of that work was not a positive thing. And, oftentimes when we sit in this setting, we talk about work leading us to play, but also the result of that work. And he's an example of he came in on Saturday morning, and you could just tell that it wasn't the arrow wasn't moving up in terms of his availability. So there were a couple of availability things going on, significant availability things. The Antonio discussion was not one that was transpiring in a vacuum. More than anything, if I could describe it, there was a lack of communication. And I was an active participant in that, to be quite honest with you, because I was singularly focused on those that were preparing to play the game, the health of those that were preparing to play the game, and overall readiness as we push forward toward the stadium. And specifically kind of in the last 24 to 48 hours, some things relative to the kicking aspect of the game with the things involving Matt and his acclimation to us. Now, largely, I'll take a step back and talk about the season. Extremely disappointed. I think that's a succinct assessment of it. The fact that we're actually standing in this room says it all. It's not what we intended to do. It's not what we embrace. It's not what we accept. We better work our tails off to ensure that, we're not having this conversation. I know that those are our intentions, but intentions are just part of it. Actions and planning and changes are all a part of addressing circumstances such as the circumstances that we're in. Being in this position affords us a lot of opportunity in terms of time to assess. Oftentimes when you go deep into the playoffs, you're getting on a moving train, whatever it is that may be in terms of 2019. the acquisition of coaching talent, the looking at free agency and draft and so forth and things of that nature. Well, we're out at the first exit. And so we have additional time. We better utilize that time. We met this morning as a staff. I talked openly about dwelling in it, being where we are, doing a really good job of being accountable and assessing what has transpired and analyzing what has transpired before we even get into the task of plotting out 19 and the things that come with it. And, just not going to be bashful about that. When you lack success, when you fail, change is a part of it. We've talked about it as a staff. We've talked about it as players in an exit interview or exit meetings. That's just our business. You can look around our business and see and recognize and embrace that element of it. So that's why it's great scarcity. That's why these moments are what they are. That's why we got to live them to the fullest. So yes, change is going to be a part moving forward. What those changes will be, we're in the process of gathering information and plotting out a course. We're not going to be resistant to change in any facet. We're not going to be resistant to accountability in any facet. We're not going to be resistant to taking ownership over what has transpired, because that's not conducive to us moving forward. And we will do that at the appropriate time, but I think part of moving forward is just waddling in it right now, to be quite honest with you. And so we're going to waddle and meet and talk and plan and proceed. Part of that planning and proceeding and so forth, health is an element of it. We're just kind of scratching the surface in terms of some of those things as well. There are potential surgeries or pending surgeries and assessments from a medical standpoint. That'll be ongoing in the subsequent days and weeks. Man, we got to proceed appropriately and aggressively in those areas, because you can't allow surgeries and the recovery and so forth to negatively affect the foundation or the preparation for 2019 when you can avoid it. And so we're doing some things in that area. But we're doing things in a lot of areas. There's a lot of irons in the fire. There's going to be a lot of irons in the fire, appropriately so, associated with wrapping a bow around 2018 and laying a foundation for 2019. So that's the framework. I'll be happy to address any questions.
Mike, what's the situation now with Antonio? Have you spoken with him, and how do you see the situation resolving?
I haven't spoken with him since that meeting I had with him prior to the game at the stadium on Sunday. Obviously, I'm going to address it. We're going to address him and the circumstance. But to be quite honest with you, we're going to information gather and use all the time at our disposal in which to do so. I was hopeful that time would be more of an essence in terms of dealing with him and his circumstances. I was hopeful that we would be working this week, but we're not. So because we're not, we're going to information gather and deal with it. But like we do in all circumstances, we're going to deal with it appropriately. We're going to deal with it in-house, and I'm sure that you'll hear about the intimate details. But because we're not playing a game this week, it hasn't been addressed to this point.
Has he asked to be traded?
Mike, do you view this as an act of petulance on his part?
Like I said last week, the circumstances being what they were and the amount of things that we were going through, it wasn't a lot of communication there. Obviously, we take his lack of communication, his lack of presence, particularly on Saturday prior to the game, to be something that's very significant and will be handled appropriately so. I'm not going to speculate on trades and things of that nature. We haven't formally received a request in that regard, so I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to speculate in terms of where the discipline might go and things of that nature. Just know that it's going to be addressed, and it will be addressed and needs to be addressed for obvious reasons.
So, Mike, as far as how we should clarify Antonio's absence on Sunday, was he absent due to injury because he couldn't participate as of Friday, or was he absent due to discipline because he didn't communicate with you?
He was absent due to injury and lack of information. When he did not show up on Saturday and I didn't know the extent of his injury, I made the decision at that time, regardless of how he felt at any point, that we were moving on and getting singularly focused on preparing to play the game. When we woke up on Sunday and felt better and Drew reached out and expressed that, I expressed to Drew that playing was not on the table because we had to draw a line in the dirt in terms of getting our group ready to play and make the last-minute preparations and so forth. So it was about his health or lack of information relative to his health in terms of determining his availability. That's why he was listed on the injury report. That's why he was listed on the injury report in the manner in which he was listed.
To your point about what you said, you were hoping the time would be more of the essence. You thought you would be playing. I mean, Cleveland kicks a field goal, you're playing this week. So is that behavior acceptable enough that Antonio could have been?
And again, I would be addressing it in a time frame in terms of urgency differently than I'm addressing it right now had we been playing. And that's all I'm going to say on it other than that, because when you're not under time constraints, then you approach things in a very different approach in terms of how you address it, the information that you gather, and the extent in which you discuss it. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Did he go through with the MRI, Mike?
He did not. On Friday, he did not. But again, when I talked to you guys on Friday, I was not aware of that.
Yeah. No, you said him and he just didn't go through.
Correct.
Mike, when you're used to having one-on-one communication with a player like that, and then when he finally gets back to you, it's his agent, what was your reaction to that? What kind of reaction do you have?
We had a game to play. And so I was focused on the guys that were preparing to play the game, and I wasn't wasting a lot of my time assessing that element of it. I knew that there would be time for that on the other side of the game, and I was hopeful that I was going to be dealing with that in a very aggressive manner because time on the other side of the game was going to be tight. But as we played the game and the things unfolded in which they did, then it became evident that unfortunately time was not going to be an element of addressing it. And so subsequently, that's why I stand before you with less answers in regards to that scenario.
Mike, is there a situation where you can envision a trade of Antonio Brown?
Again, I'm not going to speculate in terms of things that I can envision. I'm just not.
Do you have any reason to doubt the veracity of his saying that he had soreness in his knee?
I don't.
Mike, given that Antonio did not have communication with you prior to the game, how challenging for you would it be to depend on him going forward?
Again, I'm not speculating on what life is going to be like going forward. What I am going to do is address the circumstances and then move on from there.
Things seem to keep popping up, maybe outside of this building. Does there reach a point where it becomes more problematic than it's useful?
Certainly.
Mike, was there any issue between Antonio and Ben that you're aware of?
I'm sorry?
Is there any issue or situation with Ben and Antonio at practice that you are aware of?
I'm sure there's situations and conversations and disagreements that go on professionally speaking all the time, but not anything of any significance that would produce the conversation that we're having or something that would be need to overcome in the manner in which we're discussing.
Mike, the players said in the wake of this, one of the things they're talking about is a lack of trust, a bond of trust being broken, letting your brothers down, mending has to be done. Is this the proper context?
Absolutely. When we're talking about our darkest hour, okay, we're talking about playing to win a game and needing other dominoes to fall for us to be in the tournament, and the guy not communicating, that is a real element of discussion, certainly.
Did he quit on this team?
You know, you can describe it in whatever ways you want to describe it, but there was a lack of communication there that can lead to thoughts and things of that nature that can go in many directions. The bottom line is that we were playing a significant game, and he didn't do a good enough job of communicating or being available in the hours leading up to that performance. So we needed to make decisions pertinent to getting prepared to play in that performance. So I've been really clear about outlining what transpired, the level of communication and things of that nature. So obviously there's some things within that that you can infer, certainly.
Many of your players on Monday talked at length about chemistry, a lack of chemistry, a lack of camaraderie. You as the head coach, what role do you play in fostering that?
Man, I accept responsibility and I foster and develop every aspect of our culture. So that's this game. That's leadership. You embrace and respect and honor all aspects of that, certainly.
Along those lines, I mean, this is another season where you're faced with quote-unquote team turmoil. You have to stand here today and answer for AB. Is there a point where you have to step back and look at the way you're coaching your team and be more of a disciplinarian?
Certainly, I think that you're always taking a step back. And when I'm talking about taking a step back and waddling in it, I'm not only talking about those that play and those that coach in there. I start with the thumb, okay? So most certainly, you're not going to routinely do the same things and expect results to change. The fact that we're having this meeting, this press conference today, tells you that, that line of thinking is very necessary for all parties involved, and starting with me.
Mike, just to be clear, Mike, on Wednesday, things you didn't want to talk about during the season.
I'm just want to make sure I'm following questions. Go ahead.
Things you didn't want to talk about during the season, and people talked about as distractions, whether it was Le'Veon Bell or Antonio Brown or Ben Roethlisberger, any member of the things. What was that challenge like for you this season to deal with the distractions, to try to keep this team on focus, especially when it got to the later part of the season?
Distractions and things of that nature are part of the job, particularly in today's NFL. I don't run away from it. As a matter of fact, I embrace it. I never use those things as an excuse in terms of our performance and things of that nature. That's just not how I'm wired. So I don't talk a lot about that during the course of the journey. Is it challenging? Certainly. Am I appropriately compensated for those challenges? Certainly. When you get tired of those challenges, when you wear the whistle and you stand at the podium, you need to find a new line of work. I just don't have that sentiment. That's why I embrace it in the ways that I do. Not that I like it, not that it's enjoyable. It's not. But I'm not running. And I'm certainly not seeking comfort in those things relative to our performance. Because when you're good, you find ways to overcome them, you minimize them, you make them less of a story. When you lose, they become the story. But they may be ever present. And so I've been in this thing long enough to understand that nature of it, that component of it, and that's why I'm never paralyzed by it. I don't dwell on it too much. I focus on what I need to focus on, and that's keeping this group moving, improving, and winning, because that's our business.
Mike, just to be clear, are you aware that Ben and Antonio had any kind of a disagreement that would have caused Antonio to leave practice abruptly?
No.
Mike, you mentioned that you had met with your staff, and then you said that the changes could be coming. Does that mean on your staff?
And again, like I outlined, change is a part of this, particularly when you're having press conferences like today. I don't run away from that. Our staff doesn't run away from that. The evaluation process, the reviewing process, the things that we're going through as we waddle in it today, I'm acknowledging that change is a part of where we're headed, and that I'm open to it because I'm not open to repeatedly doing this.
Mike, was Antonio supposed to be here yesterday as well? It didn't show up?
Correct.
When? Do you know where he is? Have you had any communication?
Like I mentioned, I hadn't talked to him since prior to the game on Sunday. Again, I wasn't here yesterday. So.
Was he supposed to be here yesterday?
I wasn't here yesterday. So.
Was he supposed to be here today?
I wasn't here yesterday. No one was required to be here yesterday, so I don't know what your reference to yesterday was about. He wasn't here on Monday, and I didn't talk to him on Monday. I didn't talk to him after the game on Sunday. I talked to him prior to the game on Sunday. And to be quite honest with you, I wasn't looking for conversation with anyone in a professional way yesterday.
When you say that you are still in the process of gathering information of how to change things going forward, when you consider one person, Antonio Brown, do you consult players on that? Will you want your veteran players to give you their thoughts on whether they want to play with him?
Most certainly. I don't, I don't hate perspective. I don't care where good ideas come from. You can't have that attitude when you're singularly invested and focused on being better and winning, which we are.
Bobby's and Antonio's on Instagram now sending out messages while you're hosting the conference.
Yeah, social media and stuff like that is a part of our world today. I think I'm really consistent in here when I don't give it a lot of credence and I don't respond to it, I understand it may be a part of your world and elements of it may be a part of your world when convenient, but I'm just not getting into that. I don't, man. I just got too much respect for this venue, this space, this profession, and the level in which we do it. I don't care about some of those things that may seemingly, when appropriate, be important, like social media and people's participation in it.
When you do communicate with him, Mike, what do you want to hear him say?
I'm not going to frame any anticipation and things of that nature. We're going to have a conversation, I'm sure, when I get around to it. But I'm doing things, obviously, with a lot of people within our organization professionally in terms of assessing what transpired and why. So it will occur. I'm sure it will occur in the upcoming days.
Coach, your inside linebackers were questionable coming into the season, that it was a spot that needed to be filled. Do you think Bostic and Williams stepped up and played well enough to your anticipation?
I love what they were willing to do, the way that they approached it, but I'm not ready to assess or evaluate any element of play in a significant way in this setting today. We're just beginning the process of evaluating and assessing. So, I can give you a canned answer. I can give you, something of that nature, but legitimately assessing it and framing it in the ways in which it needs to be framed, I'm not going to get into that today. I'm looking at a thorough review of all components of our team, and obviously inside linebacker is a part of it. I appreciate the contributions of those men. They had their moments, man. They really stepped up and delivered in a lot of ways, but I'm not ready to assess, and particularly assess in the ways that would lead to laying a foundation for 19 and talking about needs and things of that nature. We're just not there. And we're not going to be there because of the things that I've outlined to this point regarding where we are and how we need to look at time and specifically in the short term.
Guys, 3 more questions for Coach.
Mike, what do you need to see or learn from Antonio to know that he can be a reliable member of the team?
And again, I'll cross that bridge as we begin to address this circumstance. What I wanted to do with you guys is outline in great detail what transpired with transparency and why we did what it is that we did relative to his availability and the listing of the injury and things of that nature and what's transpired subsequently. Obviously, not a lot of information and things have transpired since the game. Would have wished that was a significant issue for him and for us. But that would include us being prepared to play a game this week, and obviously we're not. So
do you have any plans to negotiate with Le'Veon Bell, or is that relationship over?
I'm sorry. I'll get both.
Thank you. Do you have any plans to further negotiate or correspond with Le'Veon Bell, or is that professional relationship over?
Again, like I outlined to a question over here, I just, we're in the process of assessing and reviewing what happened in 18, and appropriately so, and we're going to pause before we start talking about the development of 19, and that includes any and all the potential free agents and things of that nature from a personnel standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. I just don't have a lot of answers along those lines as I stand here today, and really don't want to speculate a lot because if you're legitimately open to doing what's necessary, that we're not here next year this time, then you better leave it open-ended, and we intend to do that.
Mike,
final question over here.
You've been Antonio's coach his whole NFL career. Does this affect you personally at all?
How? In what way?
I don't know. The development such as this would occur when it occurred.
There's disappointment. There's no denying that. But on a personal level, man, I've just learned over the course of time that, man, forget my personal feelings about things or the challenges that come with the position. I don't spend a lot of time focused on that. I better not. I better focus on issues and the people that I serve as a leader and the group and making sure that we're positioning ourselves to be at our best. So that's why I hesitate when you ask that, because I don't know how to answer it, because I don't spend a lot of time dwelling or focused on that.
All right.
Thank you.